All right, week 9. Let's rock and roll. DeAndre Hopkins has a toe injury, but is expected to play tonight. That's good news, as we are ready for the start of week 9, and we are previewing 8 games, 8 AFC home games. What's on the slate today, folks? Well, it's going to be Miami at Kansas City, in Frankfurt, Buffalo at Cincinnati, Arizona at Cleveland, Seattle at Baltimore, Tampa Bay at Houston, Washington at New England, and the Chargers are at the Jets. Today's episode is presented by Salesforce. Adam Azer here with Jamey Eisenberg and Heath Cummings. It's start or sit for 8 games. And Heath, I forgot. Please remind me, because I forgot to give you a Halloween tip for next year. I was going to do it yesterday.
Okay.
So just remind me. I'm going to put it in the notes again. I forgot, though. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. You guys good? You guys ready for week 9? Ready for the game tonight?
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Never more excited.
Jamey, who's the start of the week?
The start of the week is Derek Carr. A little nervous because it's Derek Carr, but, you know, I like narratives, and I'm sure he's going to want to say, hey, Raiders, look what just happened to you. Remember me? But really has nothing to do with it. The Bears are bad. They've allowed 23.1 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks this season. He's coming off his best game with over 22 fantasy points, his first game over 20 fantasy points. But it's 3 games in a row with at least 300 passing yards. It's 4 games in a row with over 18 fantasy points. And to be honest, given the landscape of quarterbacks, if he hits 18 fantasy points, he might be a top 10 guy for this week. So it's not like he's going to have the run of success that I had earlier in the season with starts of the week where they were like top 5 guys across the board. I don't think he's going to do that. Sportsline obviously very aggressive on how they feel about Derek Carr. If you're looking at the screen on YouTube, they have him 6th. I have him in the top 10. He obviously is not as high on Derek Carr as I am, but I do think the matchup sets up well, even with the addition of Montez Sweat.
Yeah, so we talked about the elite quarterbacks on yesterday's show, the ones where you feel like, okay, I've got my guy. And even though we have 4 teams on a bye, they're all playing this week. So you can start them over Derek Carr, but your rankings, Jamey, it's like you have them, and then I think you have Dak Prescott, and then you have Carr. So he's basically the best of the rest right after Dak, right?
For me, yes. You know, I think you've seen what this offense is. You've seen the way he's been playing basically since Alvin Kamara's come back. They've used him more as a weapon in the passing game than they have as a runner. You can run on the Bears, you know, so we could see that happen. And Taysom Hill showed last week that he's going to be a big part of this rushing attack as well when he had, 9 carries for 63 yards. But it's just, again, the way that Carr is playing, I think he's kind of settled into, what his role is, what his opportunity is. I hope there'll be some connections with Chris Olave, but I would not be surprised if there's a big play to Rashid Shaheed and another touchdown along the way, and then he gets close to 300 yards again.
All right, Heath, who do you love this week? Ooh, who do you love?
Can I say Zach Moss? Like, I know we're starting Jonathan Taylor and he's a top 5, top 10 running back this week, but I fully expect, and it's one of the reasons I think I might be a little bit lower on Gardner Minshew than other people, which is not normally the case. I fully expect that both Colts running backs are going to have a huge amount of success against the Carolina Panthers. I think this one's kind of a sneaky bonanza type game because that's what the Colts games have been as of late. They're running a ton of plays and they're allowing the other team, especially in the passing game, to pretty much do whatever they want. So I expect somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 touches for Moss, probably 20 touches for Jonathan Taylor, and 12 plus fantasy points for both of them.
I can make it the game of the week. Should I make it the game of the week?
Well, I would not like that. I would not love Zach Moss anymore.
Yeah. We don't really have any good games on the schedule this week, unfortunately.
There's only
no,
it's like top heavy of the best games. Like you have 3 really elite games.
Yeah. Looking forward to. Yeah, we got Miami, Kansas City. We got a lot of possibilities for Dave tomorrow. Anyway, obviously, the Sunday night game is Buffalo and Cincinnati, and of course, Dallas is at Philadelphia. So those are the players we like. Who are the players that we're avoiding this week? Heath, who's an avoid for you?
Yeah, I wasn't ready for that.
I can go if you want me to.
Derek Carr? Jamey, go.
I would like to avoid Alexander Madison. You're looking at what he's been with Kirk Cousins, and now Cam Akers starting to get a little bit more momentum. And now you take Cousins off the field, and it could be bad. And they may lean on their ground game more, and that certainly would make some sense with Jaren Hall starting. But for this week, I would only consider Madison as a flex option, and that's saying a lot with all the teams on a bye and the injuries. So don't love the setup for him. He's clearly been disappointing, so we'll try to get away from him if you can.
Yeah, Heath. Yeah.
No, I thought you were going to respond to that. No, I agree with that. I haven't found a way to get him as low as my rank as I would like, but honestly, there's probably 17 running backs that I'd like to start this week. And so I'm moving guys ahead of him that I also don't feel very good about. Like, I don't feel very good about Darrell Henderson. I don't feel very good about Jerome Ford. There's a bunch of guys in that range. I put Madison in that same range. And so I think it's another blob week at running back once you get past the top 17 or 18. And where you rank within that 18 to 26 range doesn't really tell me how much I like them. It's just that's the order they ended up in.
I like those guys a lot better than Madison. The two you mentioned.
Who? Ford?
Henderson and Ford, yeah.
Yeah, Ford, you would love Ford if you were coming off a normal game in week 8, but 3-way split, hopefully.
I think, though, it's
at Arizona.
The way that I'm approaching it is almost exactly what Kyle Shanahan said about Elijah Mitchell. He came back to practice on Friday. They weren't expecting him. And so he wasn't part of the game plan to the same level that he normally is.
Let me ask you about players to avoid potentially. We've got a lot of backup quarterbacks this week, we think.
No, we do. I mean, there's no we think we do.
Well, I'm sorry, because I was going to say we don't know about Matthew Stafford, but we have Aiden O'Connell this week. We probably have Tune, but we could have Kyler Murray. But that is scary. So I guess I would say I would like to avoid Marquise Brown. I would like to avoid Jacoby Myers. I am going to start Devontae Adams.
It's funny because
guys.
I agree with that, but when I went and found the guys I want to avoid, it was actually a team with their starting quarterback playing, and I've got, I think, all of the Seahawks wide receivers behind those guys with the backup quarterbacks. I'm just terrified of the Seahawks going. That Baltimore defense has been, like, for all the great Baltimore defenses that we've seen over the years, statistically, this looks like one of the best. And now you got Seattle flying across the country for a 1 p.m. game going up against that defense. And Geno Smith hasn't exactly been 2022 Geno Smith this season. So I would like to avoid the Seahawks not named Ken Walker.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so those are some players to start, players to not necessarily sit, but hopefully have some better options. If you want some gambling advice, you want some fantasy advice, you got to check out Sportsline. And Sportsline also has a new show. It's called Inside the Lines. Takes you behind the scenes with the brains behind the Sportsline simulation, showing you line movement throughout the week, injuries that will impact matchups, and early value plays using the model's projections. So get ahead of the lines and the public every weekday with data and analysis that you can't find anywhere else at youtube.com/sportsline. youtube.com/sportsline. That is Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Okay, Heath, listen, this is all you have to do on Halloween. A number of houses did this in the neighborhood that I'm in. You put a table at the front of your driveway with some candy in a bucket, and a little sign, take 2, whatever, put some pumpkins on it, and that's it. And then you can participate in Halloween without participating in Halloween.
That sounds really nice. You would not believe I participated in Halloween this year. I made the joke about the text that I got from my wife. And so I actually sat in my driveway in like an outdoor rocking chair next to a table with some candy on it. And then we walked around the neighborhood. It was funny. I think there were more teenagers than there were like little kids. And I can't say too much about that because my 6-foot-tall 14-year-old was trick-or-treating. But yeah, there were a lot of teenagers. It was really nice. It was fantastic. Dog didn't bark. I'm not sure I'll ever do it again, but I did it once.
Good for you. Dave said some kid rang his doorbell and asked to use his bathroom. Did you hear that story?
No. I assume Dave let him?
No, it was a joke. The kid was joking around, but I would like to know if he would have. Would you guys let someone use your bathroom? I don't think I would.
So we were walking around friend's neighborhood, and one of the moms, the wives, had to go to the bathroom, and obviously nowhere near their house. And my buddy says to his wife, "Just go ask them to use their bathroom. I'm sure they'll let you." And she's like, "There's no way I'm going to do it." Instead, she peed behind someone's house.
That's fantastic.
That's what she should do. I love it.
I would 100% allow someone to use my bathroom. Yes.
I would allow like a little kid, but anyone who's old enough to like really control their bladder, I'd be like, no, take a hike. I don't know. I don't have the. I'd want to say that. I don't think I'd have the guts to say that.
When I was in high school, I mowed some yards like a lot of high school kids do. And one time I was mowing somebody's yard and they were not home. And I had to use the restroom. I had to go to the neighbor's house and ask.
Okay. Good for you. All right. I got a running back stat. Just thought this was kind of interesting. Running backs are averaging 4.1 yards per carry this season.
Great transition.
That is the lowest. Yeah. Here's another crappy stat. Running backs are averaging 4.1 yards per carry this season, the lowest in 6 seasons. The previous 5 years, they averaged 4.4, 4.3, 4.4, 4.3, and 4.4 yards per carry. 4.1. It's pretty low compared to that. So, I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. Because like I said, Travis Etienne's 3.9 yards per carry is the number 2 running back in fantasy. There are a lot of running backs who aren't really getting it done on a per carry basis.
So what you're saying is that Travis Etienne's 3.9 yards per carry is basically like 4.2.
Yeah, sure. No, but he is below league average. But I just thought a lot of good run defenses this year. I don't know what that's all about. All right, news and notes. Will Levis is going to start tonight officially. Aiden O'Connell is going to start. Daniel Jones is going to start. Deshaun Watson was limited. They haven't ruled him out yet. At running back, and I'm sorry, what's the latest on Stafford?
He did not practice on Wednesday. Sean McVay, I believe, said that at the start of the week, they thought it was not as bad as originally anticipated from the MRI. So not a candidate for IR. I think the layout, the way you laid it out, I believe Wednesday makes the most sense. That he probably does not play this week. They have the bye next week, and they hope to get him back following the bye.
Yeah, I mean, at least I feel confident that he'll be back following the bye. If they're talking about, I'm reading their update right now, that they'll give him right up before the game to get healthy for this week. Running back, Gus Edwards missed practice with a toe injury. A lot of guys missed practice on Wednesday. Amari DiMercado missed practice. Dameon Pierce missed practice with an ankle injury.
That one sounded more serious than Gus's.
Yeah, I don't even think Devin Singletary is 50% rostered. So that was somebody I looked for in every league last night. Pierce. So if Pierce were out, Singletary against Tampa Bay, you think he'd crack your top 24?
No.
30. Yes.
Really? He wouldn't be ahead of Darrell Henderson or something like that?
I mean, he's probably going to touch the ball 14 times and average 3 yards per carry, which is probably what Darrell Henderson's going to do.
I would still prefer Henderson. I would imagine, though, that we see somebody else. They haven't been shy about using other players before. So
Mike Boone.
All right. Jerick McKinnon missed practice with a groin injury. I wish the Chiefs would go to Germany a little earlier. I feel like the Dolphins are doing it right. And Raheem Mostert missed practice yesterday, but he's back at practice already this morning. They're already out in Germany having fun, taking in the sights.
It does kind of feel like the Dolphins are just going to roll the Chiefs on Sunday morning. Like all seriousness, the vibes around the two teams. That's the way it feels.
Wow.
Oh, MVS is like, this sucks. I don't want to go. Basically.
Yeah,
that's all I saw.
He said that.
Well, he said it sucks. Yeah, he's like, we're right down the street from Arrowhead, and we have to fly 9 hours for a home game. And I get it. I mean, I'm sure a lot of players feel that way. He just said it. But he also said he understands why they're doing it. Got a lot of fans out there, and good for them to be able to see their favorite players. But yeah, but they're leaving
like he loves
tomorrow. I think they're leaving today, actually. Or no, I think they're leaving Friday. And the Dolphins are already there. Did you see Mike McDaniel's joke that he made to the media?
I'm taller than.
He's like, it's like, I know what you're all. He gets in there. He's like, okay, I know what you're all thinking. I'm bigger in person. It's like, because he's so small, and then nobody laughed, but I did.
Tua said he loves it there.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, Dolphins are gonna. I'm gonna change my pick. DeAndre Hopkins is going to play. Puka Nacua limited with a knee injury. Michael Wilson missed practice. Curtis Samuel missed practice. And I feel so stupid for not even bringing this up. Jahan Dotson has this big game. I feel like I didn't even factor in that Curtis Samuel barely played. He played less than 20% of the snaps. So we'll see. And I'm sorry about that on the waiver wire show. It should have been brought up. But he missed practice. We'll see if he plays. And I do think that probably helps Dotson and everyone that's not Curtis Samuel. Darren Waller could miss weeks with his hamstring injury. Offensive line, Baltimore left tackle Ronnie Stanley missed practice with a shoulder injury. New Orleans could be getting left tackle James Hurst back. I think he might play guard, though. I'm not sure, but that would be a nice addition for them. Miami activated, opened up the window for activation for Teron Armstead, so he could be back anytime in the next 21 days. And they could get
he made the trip.
Yeah, I think so. They could get center Connor Williams back this week as well. And the Giants, who were without both of their starting tackles last week, and they've been without Andrew Thomas since I think week 2, they both might play this week at Las Vegas. In defensive news, I don't know if you saw the injury designation for Rasul Douglas. So he Buffalo cornerback, they just acquired him from the Packers. He was listed as did not practice. The reason was just got here. He had like connecting flights or whatever, so just got here for Rasul Douglas. Cameron Hayward's going to play tonight for the Steelers. Miami safety Javon Holland is going to play this week, and they could get Xavier Howard back as well. The Dolphins are going to crush the Chiefs, and who by the way, may not have Willie Gay this week. Their starting linebacker for the Chiefs, he missed practice. They're already
Nick
without
Bolton already on IR.
Yeah. Marcus Williams for the Ravens, he might play this week. He's missed a lot of time. Safety for them. Safety Jaquan Brisker for the Bears, and linebacker Tremaine Edmonds missed practice. Cleveland cornerback Greg Newsome missed practice, and Carolina safety Von Bell practiced after missing 3 games. Those are your news and notes, and we'll update you again tomorrow. By the way, we have a live stream tonight at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Please join us, youtube.com/fantasyfootballtoday. One question for each game. Miami's at Kansas City. If you could spend the afternoon with one of these 2 coaches, who would it be?
Wow, that's a good one. I would probably go Andy Reid.
Yeah, you're gonna have some phenomenal barbecue if you're hanging out with Andy Reid. So I'm gonna go with Andy Reid.
Yeah, I love that. I love the with those nuggies commercial.
It's so good.
He's so funny, isn't he? With those nuggies. But a serious question: start or sit Rashee Rice?
I think you just treat him as you have been, number 3 receiver.
He's a low end number 3. Yeah, he's fine. I wish they'd just make him a full-time player. Probably won't happen until after the bye, but
that's next week for them. Rashee Rice or Jacoby Myers?
Myers.
Buffalo's at Cincinnati. What did your Magic 8 Ball tell you about starting Gabe Davis this week?
Start him in 3 receiver leagues. In 2 receiver leagues, it depends on who you have. Hit repeat on everything we just said.
yeah, I think I'm probably starting him.
Yeah,
that's a lot of words to fit on the Magic 8 Ball triangle there.
Yeah,
it's actually
it probably just says try again.
ask me again later. I actually have a lot to say about Gabe Davis when we get to this game, our stat of the game, our storyline of the game. But over Rashee Rice, Gabe Davis?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
I really appreciate the fact that like you try to give some really in-depth analysis about Gabe Davis and predict on a weekly basis what he's going to do. Whereas we just rank him like 25th every week and say the same thing.
Yeah, well, I what we saw last week from Gabe Davis, as we've documented, was one of the most unique Gabe Davis games of his career. I don't know, it was like the 3rd lowest route depth or ADOT or whatever it was of any game with, I think ADOT of any game with 5 or more targets. Nothing over the top. And I'll tell you why that there's a chance that might actually stick. But we'll get to that later. Arizona at Cleveland. Is there any good fantasy starter in this game? Arizona at Cleveland.
Good. Yeah. I think you can start both running backs for the Browns. And I think you could start Amari Cooper if Deshaun Watson plays. I mean, even if Watson doesn't play, you saw last week that he was still relevant again. David Njoku's been great without Deshaun Watson. I don't know if that's the correlation, but 3 of his last 4 games, he's been the number 1 tight end. And then Arizona, no.
I'm starting both tight ends.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, McBride. Yes. Excuse me.
This does feel like potentially the worst game for fantasy, though. There's not a
let's see what happens tonight first before you make that call.
We've got a game with Jaron Hall going up against Taylor Heineke.
I like Taylor Heineke for Drake London and probably for Pitts.
Is Drake London okay? Like there was a report that Drake London's really working through things, trying to make sure that he can play.
I think Minnesota's defense has kind of turned the corner a little bit. too.
Jamey's got Drake London as a sit in his column. He did not practice yesterday, by the way, with the groin injury. All right, next game is Seattle at Baltimore. Who's the best wide receiver in this game?
Who should be started the highest?
Yeah, who's your highest ranked wide receiver in Seattle?
Please start phrasing it that way.
Okay.
Zay Flowers.
Zay Flowers.
All right. Tampa Bay's at Houston. How much confidence do you have in the Houston passing game?
Not as much as last week, so hopefully that's a good thing. I would still start Nico Collins, and I would still start CJ Stroud, and that's it.
I am just kind of ignoring last week, and it may look dumb after this, but it feels like they went into last week thinking we're coming off our bye. They really wanted to have this identity as a team that could run the ball, and they've been talking for a month about how we've almost figured it out. We're about ready to get the run game going, and they saw the Panthers on the schedule, and they thought this is when we get our run game going. So they ran it 30 times and threw 24 passes, and it was a disaster. There's no way they go into a game with Tampa Bay thinking we can run the ball against the Buccaneers. So I think we go back to that 35-plus pass attempts for CJ Stroud. I'm starting Stroud. I'm starting Nico, and Tank Dell's a good number 3 for me.
Okay. Washington is
I'm starting Schultz too.
Washington's at New England. Who's a better flex, Jahan Dotson or Ramondre Stevenson?
I'm going Ramondre.
Ramondre. He's a number 2 running back for me this week.
By the way, it's something to keep an eye on. ESPN wrote a kind of an analysis of the Commanders trades, and they said that maybe that some people view the Chase Young trade as addition by subtraction. Kind of implying that he's a bit of a freelancer, got out of his lanes, and was bad for their run defense. So I'm not saying the guy who's going to replace him is going to be better, but it was kind of an interesting angle on that. On maybe Chase Young wasn't exactly what we thought.
And I think the idea that he's definitely going to earn them a comp pick after this year, like we need to see him stay healthy till the end of the year first.
Well, he's not going to earn them a comp pick now, but like that he would have.
No, the 49ers.
Oh,
they were praised because they just gave up a third and they're going to get a third right back. Well, he's got some work to do before he gets a big contract.
The Chargers are at the Jets. Any concern about the Chargers offense in this game?
Concern over sitting someone?
Yeah.
The only one that I would consider sitting who's been a starter, depending on how you use him in your league, is Palmer.
Yeah.
He clearly was not right last week's game. Kudos to him for fighting through it, but obviously something's going on there. And then you factor in the opponent. So I'm not shying away from Keenan Allen. I'm not shying away from Eckler. And I do think that Donald Parham's a streamer if there is no Gerald Everett again.
Breece Hall or Austin Eckler? I know they're both must starts, but
Eckler, PPR, Hall, everything else.
Yep.
How about Breece Hall, the first running back in like 21 games or something to have more than 33 yards against the Giants receiving? At, I think, a 50-yard touchdown. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll get into it. Miami is at Kansas City, and that will be our start, and then we'll get to Cincinnati and Buffalo and more after that. We'll be right back.
On the next NFL Monday QB, we mark the halfway point of the season with historic rivals battling it out in the NFC East and the top of the AFC throwing down in Arrowhead. Go under center on the only NFL show all about quarterbacks. Monday on CBS Sports Network.
All right, let's get to it. Dolphins are at the Chiefs. So the Dolphins have a little bit of a tendency to but not compete so well with these elite teams. Buffalo and Philadelphia so far. Chiefs are 1.5-point favorites, but Heath, that's not the vibe you're getting, huh?
No, and they were 2.5-point favorites at the beginning of the week, I think. So I think this has come down. I wouldn't be surprised if we get to Sunday morning and it's less than a point, honestly. I think it'll be a very, very close and hard fought game.
Your stat of the game, if you want, this is from CBS.de, and that is not, I don't think there's no affiliation with CBSSports.com. I don't know what the hell it is. But if you want to order 1 beer in Germany, you show your thumb. For 2 beers, you show your first finger. So I think a lot of us, if we went there, would probably end up with 2 beers more often than not, unintentionally. But there you go. Kansas City is the second best defense in football in terms of points per game. Only Baltimore allows fewer points per game. The Chiefs give up the 3rd fewest yards per play. So they're terrific. Let's have a Raheem Mostert rankings dispute. As I saw it last night, Jamey has Raheem Mostert 14th, and Heath has him.
Check again.
Oh, what is it now?
Check again.
Check again. Okay. Let's see.
Which direction did he go?
He is ninth.
You know, it's funny you say this because I was updating my rankings at 3 a.m. and I knew that Adam had already probably done his notes. I honestly thought about that. I'm like, I bet he's going to get something wrong.
I'm sure I'll get more wrong. So Mostert's ninth for Jamey, but he's second for Heath. All right, so you guys are both going to start Raheem Mostert, but Heath, a ton of confidence in Mostert.
Yeah, I don't think the Chiefs' run defense is probably going to be very good because they're going to be focused on stopping Tua, and they don't have Nick Bolton, and I don't think they're going to have Willie Gay. And the last 2 games, they've given up at least 120 yards rushing to the Chargers and the Broncos. Javonte Williams looked very good against them last week, even though the yards per carry weren't good. So I think he's gonna have a big day.
It's a great point. And I the only concern I do have is, did what we see last week, is that going to be a little bit more the norm? The lack of work in the passing game, with Wilson doing a little bit more and Savon Ahmed doing a little bit more. And if he loses that and does not score, are we going to be really frustrated with Raheem Mostert? I don't think that's the case. And granted, they were, handling New England for the most part. So, you figure more high-level game, more high-level touches for Raheem Mostert. I'm not shying away from him, clearly. But that was my initial thought. So when you saw him at 14, that was like, oh, okay. Do we have maybe a problem on our hands here?
I love this comment we have here from Jay Grizz. Watch how that Dolphins offense shrivels up and turns into pumpkins in the cold weather outdoors in Arrowhead. I just told you how to order beer in Germany, buddy. This game's not.
What's the weather there? It might not be warm.
I don't know, but it's not in Arrowhead. I actually had a stat of the game about Raheem Mostert.
Way to make fun of our audience, Adam. That's good.
I'm just having fun. In the passing game, he's had only 2 games, Raheem Mostert, where he's had really good passing or receiving numbers. 7 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown against Denver. 3 catches for 36 yards at Buffalo. Those 2 teams are among the 5 worst in receiving yards allowed to running backs. The Chiefs are the second best. Now, linebackers have a lot to do with that, right? But Kansas City allows the second fewest receiving yards to running backs. But anyway, start him, start Tua, start Hill, start Waddle. Are we cool with Waddle? Like, just not even a question?
Not even a question.
Not even a question.
Yeah, it's a cool stat, actually. Over the last 4 weeks, Jalen Waddle has the 4th highest target per route run rate among all players, and Tyreek Hill is number 1. So it's Hill. I don't remember who's 2, and then I think it's Dalton Schultz 3, and Jalen Waddle 4 targets per route run.
One other interesting thing to watch is nobody plays man coverage against the Dolphins for obvious reasons. You have to try to cover Tyreek and Waddle and man. The Chiefs generally play a lot of man coverage, so how that works out will be interesting too.
I mean, I'm so interested in this. Here are some of the receivers who have not reached 80 yards against the Chiefs. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Calvin Ridley, DJ Moore, Garrett Wilson, Jordan Addison, the Denver wide receivers twice, Keenan Allen. They are really, really good defensively, but you're going to start your Dolphins. Start Mahomes. How do you feel about Isaiah Pacheco this week, Jamey?
Must start guy. I mean, again, looking at the landscape of what the position is, who's missing, how he's performed. Yeah, no questions.
Okay. And then Rashee Rice we talked about. So I know you don't like DK Metcalf, Heath. Would you start Rashee Rice over DK Metcalf?
DK.
All right. Rashee Rice is a number 3 wide receiver. Would you start Rashee Rice or let's say Darrell Henderson?
Henderson.
Probably Henderson, yeah.
Rashee Rice is usually good for about 60 to 70 yards, I think.
He had gone 3 games in a row with at least 11 PPR points.
Yeah, and I honestly, I don't even count last week when Mahomes was as bad as he was playing with the flu. And I also feel like maybe we're overrating Darrell Henderson, especially if he has a backup quarterback. I don't want to turn this into the Darrell Henderson thing, but he's splitting pretty evenly with Royce Freeman. I think Freeman's playing more on passing downs, even though he's not getting any targets. Freeman had the touchdown last week. I don't have any confidence in Darrell Henderson. I'd start Rice in PPR. Bam. You heard it here first, folks. And in half PPR. What? Okay. I think that's it for this game.
Wow,
Start
you
Travis
just
Kelce.
shocked the world.
Buffalo's at Cincinnati. All right, here's what I find so interesting about this matchup, and it relates to Gabe Davis. The Bengals see the highest intended air yards per pass attempt defensively in the NFL. So opponents have the highest area, ADOT against Cincinnati, which is, I don't know why, but they do. Josh Allen is in a bit of a funk when it comes to throwing the ball downfield. Over his last 3 games, he's got this shoulder injury he's dealing with. He's 3 of 16 for 86 yards on pass attempts of 20 or more air yards. Cincinnati has actually allowed the second most completions of 20 or more air yards. So we always talk about Washington. Washington's like the gold standard for giving up deep balls, but apparently Cincinnati's not very good at this either. But, usually that would make me excited about Gabe Davis, but last week he changed his game. And I was watching an interview with him, and Gabe Davis said, paraphrasing, he said that Buffalo had been talking about keeping things simple, and that's what they did against Tampa Bay in week 8. He also said that they didn't huddle as much and they played faster. And one reporter said, in the preseason or in training camp, they were talking about you being used more short area. Is that kind of what we saw? And he said, yes. It just kind of felt intentional last week. I don't know. Heath, what do you make of all that? About the fact that the Bengals are susceptible to the deep ball, but the fact that the Bills haven't been doing that very well lately and actually benefited Gabe Davis last week.
Yeah, I think in a 3 wide receiver, you start Gabe Davis. In a 2 wide receiver league, it just depends on who you have.
I think the one thing that sort of stood out was, and we talked about this a little bit going into the game, not so much really about Davis. But I did mention this in terms of Shakir. They're changing how their personnel grouping is because they ran a lot of 2 tight end sets, and now without Dawson Knox, it was clearly more 11 personnel. And so, what were we going to see that was different? Well, we saw a lot of things that were different. We saw Davis run different routes. We saw Shakir more involved. Obviously, Dalton Kincaid getting different opportunities and different looks as well. And so, does that carry over to this week? The thing I think you look at this Bengals defense is, for the most part, they've been pretty good against boundary receivers. Not that that's going to change the way you've used Stephon Diggs by any stretch. But if Davis is getting all these chances, then you have to buy into starting him. So if last week is a sign of things to come, he could be a superstar for fantasy managers. But if it just goes back to like what we saw, you brought this up with George Pickens, for example, how Matt Canada went right back to having him run the same routes. If he goes back to running a lot of the same routes and Allen's shoulder is a problem, then we're going to have a Gabe Davis problem.
Exactly.
So I think you just have to hit the repeat button and just treat Gabe Davis kind of the same way for at least one more week. If he's that involved again, then you just take your chances with him as a must-start receiver if he hasn't been already. And if he goes back to 4 targets and waiting on a big play, then he's just more of a boom or bust number 3 receiver.
All right. If anybody has any questions, start or sit in the chat for this game, fire away and I'll read them because I would like to know some of your Gabe Davis decisions out there. Or
a lot of James Cook decisions because he's bad.
Right. So let's talk about the running backs here. Who do you like better, Cook or Mixon?
That's not even close.
Yeah. Well, I ask, just to kind of set up the discussion and frame how you guys like them. James Cook on the season is the number 17 running back in fantasy, but he's number 26 per game. And obviously he has a touchdown problem, but also lately he has a target problem. And it's a little hard to predict because he's getting a lot of targets. The first 5 weeks, he had 3 or more in 4 or 5 games. Last 3 weeks, he has a combined 4 targets. So yeah, Jamey, sorry, I'll throw it back to you, Jamey, then Heath. James Cook, starter sit.
Again, given the landscape of the position, you're starting him, but it's starting I think you have to understand what he is at this point. And there's a big thing looming that may happen this weekend, which is Leonard Fournette getting activated. So if they activate him off the practice squad, I think that's further indictment, not just on him, but on Latavius Murray also. Like, they're trying to change some things up in this backfield. So if Cook's not involved in the passing game, the allure is almost gone because he's not going to score touchdowns and you're getting a lot of just empty stat lines. And that's what we've been dealing with the last few weeks. So I'm souring on Cook quickly. And I do think that we could see a situation where if Fournette comes in and looks anything close to being fresh, he may be the best running back in Buffalo.
Ooh, wow. Okay.
I'm still, as you can see from the rankings here, a little bit more optimistic. I've got him ahead of the blob. And it is like, I understand you look at just the last 3 games on average, it looks pretty bad. You're also talking about a guy who's a top 18 running back for the season, and just a week ago, not the past week, but the week before that, he scored 19 fantasy points. Like he still has that type of upside on a weekly basis. And I think the Bengals are giving up 5 yards per carry this season to running backs.
I don't think it's that bad. It's not
4.
good.
4.8. I think it was 5 going into last week.
4.54. I have them at.
Okay.
I could be wrong though, because if it was 5 last week, there's no way it's down to that 4. All right, they're not a good run. They have had a bad run defense this year. Okay. All right. So Heath likes Cook more than Jamey and Dave. Would you guys start Gus Edwards against Seattle or James Cook?
Cook and PPR.
I'll go Cook in both, but it's much closer in none. All
right. How about Rachaad White or James Cook?
I kind of love Rachaad White this week, so I would go Rachaad White.
I think in PPR, I'm going to go Cook.
All right. Buffalo wide receivers start Diggs. Have we talked about Gabe Davis yet? Any interest in Khalil Shakir?
Luke Musgrave, was he playing?
He did.
He did.
Khalil Shakir, 6 catches for 92 yards on 6 targets last week. Any interest in him?
Deepest of leagues, you might want to stash him just to see if this is a sign of things to come. Because again, Knox is out for at least the next 3 games, and who knows how much longer than that. And if this is going to be the Josh Allen offense, a lot of short passes, then he'll benefit.
And folks, guess who gives up the most fantasy points to tight ends? It's the Cincinnati Bengals. And Dalton Kincaid is a must-start guy. I don't even have to ask. Just start him. I start Kelsey and Andrews over him. Would you start anyone else over Goddard? Anyone else over?
I still start Hawkinson over him.
Oh, Hawkinson, right.
I've got Kincaid third.
Okay. And Hawkinson's, I guess, not a layup at this point with over Kincaid, but all right, start Kincaid. Start Joe Burrow. Joe Mixon. We like him this week. 20 points last week. Scored a touchdown at San Francisco. We like him.
Top 10 running back.
I think, I've got him top 10.
All right. Mixon or Mostert? I know for Heath it's Mostert. Jamie, Mixon or Mostert?
Mixon.
A running back has had 3 or more catches in every game against the Bills. So hopefully Mixon can get some cheap fantasy points in the PPR department in the passing game.
They've just been bad since Milano went down.
Yeah, they really struggle. 4.8 yards per carry allowed to running backs for Buffalo, and the 5th most receiving yards per game to running backs. Good matchup. Start Chase, T. Higgins, or Gabe Davis?
I have Higgins slightly ahead, but to me they're kind of similar. You're the way I framed it and starts it is like there's going to be a breakout game coming for T. Higgins, and this could easily be that game. I know Rasul Douglas coming is going to change what this secondary looks like, but they've been struggling. For what it's worth, I know some of it was garbage time with Mike Evans, but they did give up 2 touchdowns to the receiving core in Tampa Bay last week. So would not surprise me if this is a Chase and Higgins game. I just think as Joe Burrow gets healthy, you want to have T. Higgins in your lineup because those games are coming, and could easily come this week.
What was your take, Eve?
Yeah, I'm a little bit less optimistic about the full season outlook for T. Higgins. I think he's a number 3 wide receiver. Like he's behind Gabe Davis for me, but they are in a similar range.
I don't know how much he's going to play. The last 2 games, he played 56% of the snaps and 67% of the snaps.
I don't know that he's a number 2 wide receiver right now.
You think it's Boyd?
And there weren't many targets for Boyd last week, but things have gone a lot better for him than they have for Higgins.
Well, Higgins had 69 yards last week. Boyd hasn't had that. He hasn't had more than 52 yards in any game. He does have a touchdown in 2 straight games, but Tyler Boyd is like, he's like a 4 for 50 kind of guy. Most weeks you're hoping he scores. All right. Look, you know what? I don't know about you, but my lineups are in much worse shape this week than they were 2 weeks ago when we had the 6 teams on bye.
That's next week for me.
Next week for you, I'm struggling this week. I bid heavily on Demario Douglas because I didn't want to start a player on a bye, basically. So if Tyler Boyd might be a viable option for some people out there, I think you'll get 10 points. All right, Irv Smith, we're gonna sit the DSTs. And we just went through those. Let's keep the fun going with the best games of the week. Arizona is at Cleveland. Would you start Kyler Murray or Deshaun Watson if they start this week?
Why do we think Kyler's playing?
I just thought he hadn't been ruled out.
I think
But
they
unless
kind of
something
they're
changes.
starting Clayton Tune.
Okay. So would you start Deshaun?
I don't know if you saw when you kind of alluded to it earlier. I didn't know if you saw something.
No, I just thought that they hadn't officially ruled him out for the week because he's practicing in full.
Yeah, I think they're just getting him ramped up for next week.
Yeah, it's the update I saw on October 30th. Coach Jonathan Gannon said Monday that Murray or Clayton Tune will be the starting quarterback. All the reports, I guess, have been that it'll be Tune, but they could be singing a different tune by the end of the week. You never know. So anyway, would you start Deshaun Watson if he plays?
I would not.
Yeah, no. You need to see it from him first. If you're in quarterback hell, you just lost Cousins. You've been starting Stafford in a 14-team league, and somebody dropped Watson for whatever reason. He's not a bad player to put on your bench just to see, because there is still 20-point upside on a weekly basis. But I mean, it was a struggle for him to get there when he was healthy, and now he's got the shoulder problem. So you can't start him until you see it, even though the matchup is good.
How much would Michael Wilson's availability, because he missed practice Wednesday, impact your Marquise Brown rankings, Heath?
Very little.
I don't want to start Marquise Brown. Please don't make me start Marquise Brown.
Why would you have to start Marquise Brown?
Would you start him over Tyler Boyd? I think I'd start him over Tyler Boyd.
Yes. But I mean, we're talking about, he's closer to Rashee Rice than he is to Gabe Davis right now.
I've got him, I think, back to back with Rice, and I think, Adam just told us he's got some struggles at wide receiver this week. Jamey, he's going to be.
I would start Douglas over him,
I mean, look, when you draft as much Jerry Jeudy as I have, right?
I've got Demario Douglas over Marquise Brown.
Yeah, same.
Jahan Dotson over him.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's a question from the chat: Trey McBride or Taysom Hill in non-PPR?
Hill.
I would still go McBride, but it's close.
Oh, why was Matt Weber booing my Clayton Tune joke? Singing a different tune. Come on, you do better. You come up with a better Clayton Tune joke, Matt. What do you got?
Adam,
he's gonna tune
this
you
is
out.
the second time that you have gone after our audience. You need to change your tune.
Matt's a loyal listener. We email. We're cool. Okay, loyal viewer, I guess I should say. How do you feel about Amari DiMercato if he's able to play? He's 77% rostered. He had 21 touches last week. He had 17 touches the week before. Cleveland, yes, we think of them as a great defense. They are 10th best against running backs, and they allow 4.3 yards per carry, but they're not an easy matchup. How do you feel about DiMercato, Jamey?
DiMercato, no. DiMercato, yeah, flex at best. I mean, he's going to get work, which is good. And on a week where we're struggling for options, he could maybe get you 7 or 8 points, but I doubt he scores. I mean, you're talking about backup quarterback on the road. This offense could really be a problem.
Okay. Heath, where do you have... Hold on, I'm going to make a Halloween joke.
Oh, good.
Very timely.
Because your jokes have been good so far.
Yeah.
I can't find the damn music. Is it this one? No. Where's that Halloween music I had? Anyway, where do you rank Trey McBride of Frankenstein?
He is. That was awful. I was really trying to think what's he going for here? He's a low end start. Like I said, I'd start Taysom Hill over him, but only in non-PPR. A top 10 tight end. The Browns defense is very scary, and Clayton Tune might be an absolute zombie in the pocket, but he's probably still starting Trey McBride. Like, it's funny. I talked about last week, tight ends deep now, and I do think it kind of is, except 5 of the top 12 aren't playing this week. So it seems a little less deep this week, or 4 of the top 12.
Yeah, the thing that you like is
Yeah.
the team, and
Yeah.
hopefully Clayton Tune sings the same theme. Theme is they're number 1 in tight end targets in the NFL. And you saw last week 14 targets from Dobbs, first game without Zach Ertz. And that was against Baltimore, which is a great team at defending tight ends too. So, he's going to get volume, you would anticipate. And chasing the score, I think he'll be okay.
Right. Baltimore was second best against tight ends going into last week. Cleveland is the best against tight ends. They allow the fewest fantasy points. The difference is Baltimore had faced really no good tight ends. Cleveland's faced Mark Andrews had a big game against them, 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. George Kittle had 1 catch for 1 yard. So they've only faced 2 good tight ends. We have a question. Oh, sorry. Trey McBride or Dalton Schultz was a question.
McBride. I think Schultz is going to be in trouble.
I have Schultz just ahead of him.
Trey McBride or Dallas Goedert?
Goddard.
I currently have McBride higher, but that's something I need to change.
Any James Conner news, asks Mark. All I saw was that, they said he's excited to get back when he gets back. Something like that.
I saw the update on our site that at least the headline said something like hopefully back for week 10 or potentially back for week 10.
Okay.
That's when he's eligible.
Yeah, that'd be great. Who do you like best of this group? Charbonnet, DeMercado, or Alexander Madison?
Madison.
Still Madison.
Okay. So let me ask you guys, let's talk about the Cleveland Browns now. We're going to sit the quarterbacks. Yeah, look, this matchup couldn't be much better for running backs. They give up the 3rd most fantasy points. Running backs had 19 or more carries in 6 straight games against Arizona, 17 or more carries in every game. Heath, do you think we'll get a running back on Cleveland with 17 or more carries? Because like I said, every single game that's happened against Arizona.
I don't really. I think it's definitely going to be a 2-headed monster, and there's a possibility that Pierre Strong, he won't be as involved as he was last week, but I don't think he's going to be a nothing either. And so listen, it was good that Jerome Ford was able to play through it, but it was still, even though it was a low grade one, it was still a high ankle sprain. I don't feel confident that he's going to be 100% this week.
I believe it was just a low ankle sprain, not a low grade high ankle sprain.
Okay.
Let's change.
I think Heath might be right on this, but
Okay. I'm just curious. Again, I'll go back to, I think what we saw was showed up in practice on Friday, not part of the game plan. We'll work him in if we can. And that's what we saw. So I don't think Pierre Strong is taking his touches. I think Kareem Hunt is probably the safest bet, but I still think Ford has the most upside. So I think both guys have top 20 potential this week.
all right, we got to talk about Jerome Ford or let's do some Jerome Ford or Ramondre Stevenson against Washington.
Stevenson, but they're close for me.
Ramondre.
Jerome Ford or Brian Robinson at New England.
I would start both Browns running backs over Robinson.
Wow.
Yeah, I have Robinson ahead.
Jerome Ford or Zach Moss?
Moss.
Jerome Ford or Gabe Davis? Half PPR.
There's more upside with Davis.
Yeah.
Amari Cooper or Gabe Davis?
Davis.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, you look at Amari Cooper's game log. If the Browns have even a halfway competent passing game, he has a good game. He had a bad game when they threw for 154 yards, when they threw for 121 yards, when they threw for 183 yards. They can just get to 200 yards passing. He'll probably be good, but we can't guarantee that now, can we? So he's a number 2, 2-3. Yeah, he's like a high-end number 3 wide receiver for you guys. Would you start Amari Cooper or DK Metcalf?
I would start Amari
Cooper.
Would you start David Njoku or Cole Kmet, David Njoku or Dalton Schultz?
Njoku over both.
I would go Schultz, Njoku, Kmet.
Question from the chat. Amari Cooper or Jordan Addison?
Addison.
I've got
quarterbacks.
Cooper higher.
Okay.
If we get to Saturday and they say rocket scientist Joshua Dobbs has learned the playbook and he will be starting for us, then it would be Addison for me. I'm just afraid Jaron Hall could be really, really bad.
And the last one, Jerome Ford or Rashad
I know
White?
PJ Walker's been bad, though.
He has been, yeah. Ford or White?
White.
White.
Okay. Let's take a break. When we come back, Seattle is at Baltimore. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. All right, we're back here. And Seattle's at Baltimore. I feel like Schaefer's got something he wants to display. You want to?
It's tweet of the day. So it's a new segment on the show. tweet of the day.
Oh, that's great. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's me sitting in. Is that the shirt I'm wearing today? Me sitting in a desk outside with a sign that says Bruno Mars is the king of rock and roll. Change my mind. There should be some Halloween candy on there, right? That's good stuff. Thank you, Hipster Doofus 21, for your beautiful Photoshop work. Seattle at Baltimore. Starter sit Geno Smith.
Sit.
Okay. How do you feel about Ken Walker? Are you nervous about Ken Walker this week?
I mean, slightly by comparison to where he's been all season, but not enough that I'm sitting him.
Yeah, I'm mostly just assuming that he wasn't 100% last week, and that was the whole reason why. It has been just a daily occurrence of Pete Carroll gushing over Zach Charbonnet, but we know when Pete Carroll does that, it doesn't necessarily mean more playing time. So I'm just assuming that Walker goes back to, 70%.
Yeah, and Baltimore actually, again, they're giving up 4.3 yards per carry to running backs, which is bad this year, and they're 16th against running backs. So they're not. I feel like they're probably better than that, but for whatever reason, they just haven't been. But they've only allowed 2 rushing and 1 receiving touchdown to running backs this year.
Yeah. I don't think it's a coincidence that 2 of the best defenses in the NFL are okay with you running it for 4.3 yards per carry between the 20s. That's a pretty good plan.
Yeah, I also think I haven't looked this stat up, but there are only 2 running backs who have had more than 14 carries against Baltimore. I don't know how they rank in terms of running back carries allowed, but there have been only 2. So, they score a lot of points. Probably don't run that much against Baltimore. A lot of teams are throwing a lot on them. Let's see, there have been 5 quarterbacks who have thrown 36 to 44 passes. Jared Goff threw 53 passes against Baltimore. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But you're not going to sit Ken Walker. All right. So Jamey, you are higher on DK Metcalf. You have him as a low end number 2. Heath has him around 30th overall.
Update.
Oh crap. All right. What do you got? Where are you now on DK?
Outside the top 24, inside top 30.
14 targets last week. I went back and I watched every one of them. And Geno, they were not on the same page. Geno had a bad game last week. A lot of inaccurate passes.
He's had more bad games than good games this year.
Yeah, and the turnovers have been bad for him lately too. But I don't know. I mean, the targets. Are there any underlying signs that you guys like for DK Metcalf?
14 targets.
Yeah.
They're giving him chances to succeed. It's just not happening. And so I think you just have to, sort of understand that it's hard to bench him. Clearly, because you know what the upside is when he connects and when there's those targets connecting. But, Tyler Lockett had less targets and was better. JSN scored touchdown 2 straight games. They're running the ball very well, and so their defense has been playing a lot better. I don't know if, just DK's a slam dunk, top 15, top 20 wide receiver. It's almost like Gabe Davis at this point, just you put him in your lineup in 3 receiver leagues and hope that he has a big game.
Was his ADOT still really high last week as well? Because it's been it's about 2 yards higher than it was the year before. And the way Geno's struggling with accuracy, I wonder if you'd just rather be the guy who's getting the shorter targets from him.
Geno made I don't know. The best play that Metcalf had was a beautiful throw, a deep ball for 43 yards. He had 4 catches for 24 yards on his other 13 targets last week. And he had 4 end zone targets last week too, and couldn't come down with any of them. So if I picked up Demario Douglas, am I starting him over any Seahawks wide receiver? Start him over Lockett or JSN?
Over JSN, yes, I would.
JSN's for sure. I've got Lockett and Douglas basically back to back.
Yeah, the thing about JSN is when Metcalf missed the game a couple weeks ago, JSN ran deeper routes, played on the outside, and had a much better, more appealing role. He went right back to playing almost exclusively in the slot and running 5-yard routes. He did score, but that's not the kind of stuff that really excites us. Sit the tight ends, or sit the Seattle tight ends. Lamar Jackson is a must start. Gus Edwards. All right, big difference in his ranking in PPR and non-PPR. He's 17th or so, and I don't even know what the rankings are anymore. Probably, but he's a better start in non-PPR, obviously. Does anybody want to start this guy who's got 2 straight games with 21 or more PPR fantasy points? Gus Edwards, any takers?
Yeah, I mean, look at the week.
Low end number 2.
Right. He's hard to bench. He's hard to trust, but you know that they're going to make. He's their guy. He is their running back. So we thought maybe they'll make a trade at the make a deal at the trade deadline. We thought maybe Justice Hill, maybe Keaton Mitchell, and that still may happen. I think Hill's interesting because of what the Seahawks allow in the passing game to running backs. At times, it hasn't exactly been consistent, and Hill's coming off a 4-catch game. So if you are desperate in PPR, he's not a bad flex. Deeper leagues, obviously. But I mean, look, Gus is a candidate for 15 plus carries. He's a candidate to work at the goal line. He's basically just become their de facto rusher, which has happened a lot of times in his career when somebody like J.K. Dobbins, for example, has been hurt.
Would you start Gus Edwards or Deontay Foreman?
Edwards.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Jerome Ford.
Edwards is probably safer just knowing that he's going to get touches.
Yeah, I've got Gus, I think, 2 spots ahead of Ford. If Ford got in a full practice, then I would have Ford ahead of Gus.
Zay Flowers, half PPR.
Zay. Any PPR, I would take a top 30 wide receiver probably.
Over Gus. You like Zay Flowers? He's coming off his worst game of the season. 6.9 fantasy points at Arizona.
I do, yeah. I think this is a game where they'll be throwing, and Lamar Jackson will lean on him. And so I don't think the secondary is one to fear right now.
It's interesting.
It's so hard to judge them right now because like they have looked good at times, but the last couple of weeks they faced PJ Walker and Josh Dobbs, and before that it was Joe Burrow not quite right, and then it was Daniel Jones or Tyrod Taylor. I can't remember which one. Like
Daniel Jones.
Yeah, he's a borderline number 2.
11 sacks that game. 11 sacks.
11 sacks, yeah.
They've actually faced the Seahawks are giving up the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers. They have faced some really good ones. Puka, St. Brown, Thielen, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jamar Chase, Marquise Brown, Amari Cooper. They've like everything else, they've gotten better the last few weeks. Start Mark Andrews, and the Ravens DST as of 2 a.m. last night was top 4 for everybody.
I mean, just keep in mind, they did just get Leonard Williams. So pass rush might be even better, and run defense might be even better too. So that could be tough for Baltimore across the board.
All right, Tampa Bay's at Houston. This is actually a pretty interesting game, I think, from a fantasy standpoint. Tampa Bay at Houston. These are 2 teams where, especially Houston. I'm just like, I don't know. So, right? Yeah, right. I mean, it was specifically with Nico Collins and CJ Stroud at this point, but Heath, I think, hesitant to say this, but I think you are higher on Chris Godwin, Nico Collins, and Dalton Schultz. I feel like you are higher on this game than Jamey.
I may be higher on this game. And again, I kind of said it earlier in the show with the Texans. I'm pretty much just overlooking what happened last week. I think they came out of the bye with a bad plan against a bad run defense, and their run game's so bad they can't run against bad run defenses. They certainly can't run against Tampa Bay. So I think we go back to CJ Stroud throwing the ball more. I think Nico and Tank will both be fine, and Schultz as well.
And Jamey, I think you're a little more hesitant on everybody.
To a degree, I think again, Nico is still a starting number 2 wide receiver. I'm concerned about Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz because we haven't seen them coexist and perform well at the same time. And so, Noah Brown being back, that's a big part of it. Also, I know Robert Woods not being there should help those guys, but I don't think that they're both going to be successful. I'm going to lean more toward Dell than I am toward Schultz because of the matchup. I know Dalton Kincaid was awesome against them last week, but he's really the only tight end that's had success against him. And they faced a gauntlet of great tight ends this year. So their tight end defense for the most part has been fantastic. So Schultz is easy for me to sit. Dell is more of okay, if he's been a number 3 receiver for me, I'll still start him. I don't have him ranked that way. I have him ranked behind that because I do think we need to see a little bit more. And I think what you talked about in terms of teams trying to take away the deep ball from him, that's going to be a little bit more relevant when you're talking about rookie quarterback, rookie wide receiver. So I don't think he's a slam dunk. I just think that Stroud will be better than what we saw last week. Maybe not to that 20-point threshold. He still has that, though, in his holster, and hopefully that shows up this week against Tampa Bay.
Who do you like better, Baker or Stroud?
Stroud, but they're back-to-back for me.
Stroud for me, and they're both top 12.
Boy, over who?
Well, there's not, like you said, there's 7 good quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I would start both over Will Levis, for example.
I'd start both over Jordan Love. I'd start both over.
Yep.
I've got both. I think I've got Minshew maybe one spot ahead of Baker, but I've got Stroud over Minshew.
I have it
Yeah.
Minshew, Stroud, Baker, all three of those guys over Geno. It's not a great week of quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's just terrible. I have a lot to say about the Bucs. I want to finish up here with the Texans. And yeah, are you? I'm surprised you weren't more optimistic about Devin Singletary, I guess, because I feel like he's having a decent year. In the limited opportunities he's got, he's been better than Pierce, for example. And if Pierce plays, obviously not touching these guys, but if Pierce is out, if I'm in running back hell, I would be excited about Devin Singletary. As of last night, he was only 41% rostered. Relatively excited.
They've given up one touchdown to a running back this season.
And you think Mike Boone would be annoying?
They would definitely use a second guy. I don't think it would be, hey, Khalil Herbert's out, no Roshan Johnson. Let's go with Deontay Foreman for, 28 touches, whatever. I just think we'll see somebody else. I think it's still it's more about the team. They're struggling to run the ball as a team. They've tried both guys, and so yes, he'll get touches. It's like Chuba Hubbard last week.
Yeah. But Chuba Hubbard the week before against the Dolphins, or 2 weeks, they're by. Any running back who's going to have that opportunity, I'd probably take over someone who's in a split backfield and isn't good. But maybe he doesn't get the opportunity. I think Devin Singletary.
Go ahead.
I think you have to remember how bad the Panthers have been against running backs this year. They're giving up still 5.07 yards per carry to running backs. And last week, Singletary and Dameon Pierce combined for 23 carries for 81 yards against that defense. They can't run the ball.
Well,
it would be, look, it's certainly worth picking up Singletary if there is no Pierce. Whether you start him or not, it depends on what you're looking at. Like I would take him over DeMarcado, for example. He would be in the same mix as, you brought up Henderson, same mix as Henderson, same mix as the Browns guys, that type of situation. For me, it would be close to James Cook just because I don't think Cook's going to have a great game. So he'll get those chances. Hopefully he'll succeed. The bigger thing, though, is if he does succeed, he probably pushes Dameon Pierce to the bench completely.
By the way, you guys, to go back to Nico Collins, you're starting Dak Prescott over over CJ Stroud? CJ Stroud.
I would, yes.
They are right in the same range. I've got Prescott one spot ahead of Stroud.
Okay. And so basically, yeah, Jamey already talked. He doesn't like Dalton Schultz this week. Heath has him top 7. We go over to the Buccaneers, and here's where this game could be decided. In the red zone. The Texans defense is 6th in points per game. Unbelievable. But they're 18th in yards per play. This team has been the worst run defense in the NFL basically for the last 3 seasons. This year, they've allowed one run longer than 20 yards. They're one of 3 teams, I believe, who have not allowed a 25-yard carry this season, the Houston Texans. Keep that in mind for Rachaad White. But what they really do is they excel in the red zone. 7th lowest red zone conversion rate allowed. That means when you get in the red zone, how often does a team score a touchdown? 7th best in that category for Houston. And this is what D'Amico Ryans, their head coach, said. When it comes to the points per game, it's something that we pride ourselves on not allowing teams to get in the end zone. I think we've done a good job with that over the past couple of weeks. And it really comes down to executing and guys just being on the same page when it comes to communication. Everybody is where they're supposed to be. Everybody plays with great eye discipline. When you do that consistently, especially when it gets tight in the red zone, you're going to keep people out of the end zone. So they're great in the red zone, and guess what? The Buccaneers are not. They have the 5th lowest conversion rate on offense in the red zone. So that might be where it boils down to, and we'll see.
I think the nice thing for Rachaad White is that prevention of big plays that the Texans have doesn't really affect him. His longest carry this season's 15 yards. He wasn't going to have a 25-yard carry anyway.
He is a pass catcher and a pass catcher only right now for his fantasy appeal. That is it. I mean, his rushing totals are non-existent. His touchdown potential is non-existent. You're hoping for 6+ catches like he's had each of the last 2 weeks. 13 catches in the last 2 games.
He's Bizarro Gus Edwards.
Yeah, correct.
And the Texans struggle against pass catching running backs. They give up the 7th most receiving yards per game to running backs. So that could benefit him. Yeah. All right. So he's going to be a guy that you're starting over a lot of the really crappy situations.
In PPR.
In PPR, yeah.
Right.
Would you start Rashad White or Isaiah Pacheco in PPR?
Still Pacheco.
Pacheco.
Rashad White or Nico Collins?
I would go with Rashad White in PPR.
I think there's more upside for Nico. I'll go with Nico.
Starting to maybe see a little shift at wide receiver in terms of who's going to be the better one down the stretch. It's still Mike Evans. I get that. But encouraged more by Chris Godwin lately.
Mhm.
He has 10 red zone targets this year. Mike Evans has 5. Evans has a lot of end zone targets, but they're deep shots. But Godwin with 10 red zone targets. They finally connected in the end zone last week. Starter sit Chris Godwin. I know you guys, Evans a must start for you. Starter sit Chris Godwin, Heath.
I'm starting Godwin too. He's a number 2 wide receiver. I think I had him a little bit high, probably when you look at the rankings. I had him around 15th, but he's going to be a top 20 wide receiver for him. I do like the increased involvement. It seems like he and Baker are finally at least getting on the same page.
Jamey, where'd you move him to after I wrote that you had him 27th in my notes?
I don't think I moved him very much, but I do need to move him up a couple spots. I don't know if he'll crack the top 24, but he'll probably be a spot or 2 higher.
All right. I'm going to guess there's no interest in Kate Otten, even though the Texans are dreadful against tight ends. No interest. All right. All right. I think we have 2 games left. You like a DST in that game, by the way? No, right?
Not really, no.
All right. 2 games left. Let's go to Washington and New England. Stat of the game. Try to diagnose what is wrong with Ramondre Stevenson. Well, how about this? In their last 5 games, the Patriots have run between 51 and 56 plays in every game. That is so bad. For context, Denver is last in the NFL. They average 56.6 plays per game, and the Patriots have been below that 5 straight weeks. They've been at below 28 minutes of possession in all 5 games. You can't, it just stinks, right? And so that's why Ramondre is getting no carries. Let's do Ramondre versus Brian Robinson. You both like Ramondre better, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and full PPR. I would also say though, like that's not all that's wrong with Ramondre Stevenson. He's averaging 3.2 yards per carry and 5.1 yards per target. Like he needs he's basically Rashad White. He needs those 5 or 6 catches to be good.
Yeah. But you look at the game like, why is he getting so few carries? And I think the main reason is they're just not running enough plays. And you know, Zeke is a factor too, obviously.
Right.
But I feel like Brian Robinson could bounce back here if they can just be competitive. You know, I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's you almost Brian Robinson and Ramondre Stevenson almost both need the same thing.
That I don't know.
I don't think Stevenson's.
I mean, that's kind of been
Robinson needs a touch, right? Robinson needs a touchdown, and Stevenson needs catches or a touchdown.
Stevenson needs the Commanders to score enough points to where he gets the targets.
I feel like Stevenson has 2 outs every week. He could score a touchdown or he could catch the passes. Robinson has 1 out.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons I like Stevenson this week is, you know, we're hoping that Demario Douglas takes a step forward. They're down 2 receivers. You know, they just lost Kendrick Bourne. Devontae Parker's in the concussion protocol. They're basically asking 2 unproven guys because Tyquan Thornton's not going to have to play a big role. I mean, Juju might be a sleeper this week for all we know, you know, just based on how much opportunity he may get. I would lean toward Douglas, and I think part of the reason why you can maybe take a shot on Thornton, certainly in DFS, you talked about this earlier, Adam, how bad Washington's been against the deep ball. So Mac Jones is very interesting this week because the Commanders have just been bad against quarterbacks. I said it yesterday. I probably look foolish, and we'll find out tonight that I would start Mac Jones over Will Levis, you know, coming off the game that Levis just had and how Mac Jones performed this season. But Bill, we'll go down together. But I think there's just an opportunity here. And this is, for me at least, this is what I was kind of waiting to see was feature some of these younger guys, you know, especially as their season started to go the wrong direction. But in terms of Stevenson, Mac Jones trusts him. And when he throws him the ball, he's typically been successful with it. So I think there's a chance for him to still be very involved in the passing game, score ahead, score behind. You know, I don't think that really changes things for this particular game. So I like Stevenson probably more so than I should.
We have a question from Dylan. Would you start Jahan Dotson or Demario Douglas?
Again, probably wrong for saying this, but I'd go with Douglas.
I'm going with Douglas.
What do you make of the fact that the Commanders really struggle against the deep ball and Douglas does not do that? Does that matter to you?
I think he's going to do different things this week. We'll find out. Again, that's
I
why
don't know if he can
Tyquan
do
Thornton
that,
is very
though.
interesting.
He's such a short area guy. I mean, he's just a slot guy. I don't think he's going to be running like vertical routes on the outside.
But it could be a vertical route in the seam. I mean, there are different ways to, get him involved. And again, it doesn't have to be, a deep play. They just lost their 2 pass rushers. I mean, Mac Jones may have plenty of time to sit back there and throw if these guys replacing, Young and Sweat are not going to get to him. And it's not like they were getting to the quarterback that much anyway.
Yeah.
And he does have 2 or 3 games. Like he's been on limited targets, so it's basically just one or 2 targets that went deep. But he's got 3 games with an ADOT of 11.9 or higher, and 2 with an ADOT of 14.5 or higher. So they have taken some shots with Douglas.
Okay, he's got one of the lower route depths in the NFL. But
right, yeah, most of the time he doesn't do that, but he has occasionally.
I said so.
Yeah, just real quick while we're on the receivers, there's a guy that's missing that's been very involved the last month in Kendrick Bourne. And unless they're changing their offense, somebody's going to have to step up and assume that responsibility.
Okay, so who's an easy start in this game? Just McLaurin?
I still think I would put Ramondre as an easy start, but I don't think he's a great start. So I would say McLaurin is a great start. Yes. I'm
starting Sam Howell unless I have one of the great quarterbacks. I'm starting Logan Thomas. The Patriots haven't been a great tight end defense like they historically have been this year. I'm starting Ramondre and Terry.
Hold on, Heath. So Howell and Thomas versus Stroud and Schultz. What do you think?
Howell over Stroud. And I think I have Thomas over Schultz.
Yeah, I would take the Commanders too. I'll tell you what, I'm very intrigued by the Patriots DST because they have not been good. And Sam Howell just faced the Eagles and was sacked a season low 1 time. Right. But we know what that's been for him this year. And they may get to him finally. They may get some pressure on the quarterback. So I think the Patriots DST is in play.
Where did you end up in the rankings with Douglas and Dotson?
Douglas is like 33, I believe, and Dotson's like around 36.
As of right now, Douglas is 34 and Dotson is 40.
Are you ranking Dotson as if Curtis Samuel was playing?
No.
Yes, I'm ranking him as if Samuel's not playing.
Not playing. Okay. Anything else from this game? Like Sam Howell, Sam Howell, top 10 quarterback this week for you guys. So, and it's just a terrible week. But you're not starting him over Derek Carr. Jamey isn't. He is starting Howell over Derek Carr. Howell or Minshew?
Howell.
Oh, all right, cool. I think that's it for this game. I'll do Logan Thomas or Trey McBride.
McBride.
I think I have Thomas 1 spot higher.
Pickens or Dotson from Bigfoot, Michigan, Rob?
Pickens.
Let me just say something. Michigan football is, that is like, they cheated so bad.
I don't get it.
They just had
I don't understand.
You're not allowed to get to send people to games to scout. And he did.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Over and over and over and over.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's fine. Change the rule.
Well, my guess is it would just give the teams with more money and more resources a big advantage.
Well, that's not something that we can stand for.
But they see all this stuff. They see all this stuff on tape anyway. Like, what are they?
I think signs. I don't know. But then like there's this guy is on the sideline. He's standing next to the defensive coordinator when the opponent's.
Yeah, that one was bad.
And then you know what it sounds like? It sounds like everybody probably does stuff like this, and this guy was just better at it than everybody else. And now he's being punished for it
in plain sight. And they're like, I don't know anything about this. Like, this is such a liar. It's unbelievable. Like, such bad cheating. All right, one more game here. Chargers at the Jets. Justin Herbert's top 7. You go into this game, you start your Chargers, but you hope that they come through because the Jets are really good. Obviously, defensively, they're really, really good. You start Eckler. The Jets do allow the 6th most receiving yards per game to running backs, but they have allowed, now it's 17 games dating back to last year. So it's like a full season. The Jets have allowed 3 rushing touchdowns to running backs. Start Keenan Allen, and then you guys want to avoid Palmer and Quentin Johnston?
I do. I do think that if you have a roster spot to play with, we're going to find out the injury report today for that game because it's Thursday and they play Monday. That if Palmer is not practicing, you pick up Johnston and then you see what happens in this game. It's obviously not going to be an easy matchup. The Jets, as you said, they're very good, but 6 targets, 5 for 50, did some different things. We know second half of the season when rookies start to take off. So hopefully, another injury would help Johnston, start to play well. Mike Williams is out. He's going to be great. No. But if Palmer and Mike Williams out, then maybe Johnston has a chance to be something. So just keep an eye on that.
All right. You know what? The tight ends are kind of interesting here because Donald Parham, I believe on the broadcast, they showed, I could be wrong about this, that Donald Parham has the highest touchdown rate of like anyone in the NFL in terms of his targets or catches, whatever it is that end up in touchdowns. All he does is catch touchdowns.
But he did some different things though without Everett there.
Yep.
He had 4 catches, 43 yards, and a touchdown. That's pretty good. He has 11 touchdowns on 78 targets in his career. Everett practiced at the end of last week. They didn't have a practice yet this week, so I feel like there's a chance he comes back. But a roundabout way of asking, do you have any interest in a Chargers tight end this week?
I would love Parham if there is no Everett, and I would have moderate interest in Everett if he practices and is on target to play, especially if Palmer does not play.
Okay. Breece Hall, it's funny, the Jets are so bad, but offensively, but they have 2 players who are a clear-cut, absolute, no doubt about it, starts this week. Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. Week. Garrett Wilson's top 13 in both formats. Yeah, I mean, the only problem with Garrett Wilson is he has 2 touchdowns. He has 5 straight games without a touchdown. You think about the touchdowns he scored, like kind of fluky, right? But Zach Wilson
playing defense on offense is not fluky at all. Come on.
What'd you say?
When you play defense on offense.
Yeah, exactly. Zach Wilson's thrown 5 touchdown passes in 7 games. But the Chargers allow the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers. Which DST do you prefer in this game?
The one facing Zach Wilson.
I knew you were going to say that. What about the one that's actually good, though?
It's not like Herbert's been turning the ball over a lot, though, lately.
No, they give up the 2nd fewest points to DSTs. The Chargers.
I have the Jets 1 spot higher, but they're both starts. Let's
have a 5-minute rankings dispute on that.
Can we show the tweet again?
Is that a meme? Is that a thing that changed my mind?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know anything about anything. I think I watched 3 innings.
Can we make that a soundbite?
Yeah, man. Oh boy, it's been a crazy week, man. A lot of yelling about candy in the house. I don't know if that's happening for Jamey. Jamey's got younger kids. Yesterday, I had to throw out candy. I was like, if you do that again, I'm throwing your candy away. And Andrew did whatever he was doing again. And I was like, watch this. And I threw candy in the garbage and he lost it. It's been
Happy Halloween.
You know how much candy gets thrown out? Like, it's unbelievable, right? Like you could feed a country with all the candy that's getting thrown out this week.
You could donate it.
Who are you gonna do? Like, what are you gonna donate? Skittle candy to people? I mean, could you donate? Does anybody actually do that? It's not like healthy stuff. It's not like you want to give people this candy. It's not nourishment. It's not nourishment.
Right, but
if you tell me how to donate it, I will donate it tomorrow.
Because I'm sure if you go to any local religious center, they probably will take it. I would imagine if you go to any homeless shelter, they probably will take it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess. But no, who does that? Do you do that?
Do we donate candy?
Yeah.
We donate food. I think during COVID, I think I made 100 turkey sandwiches for a church in Boca.
Oh, that's so nice.
And it was you walked in the kitchen and there was just bread everywhere because we had it stations.
That's great. No, I mean I donate to food banks, but I don't know about candy.
Yeah, give them some candy.
Okay. All right, everybody. Have a great day. Talk to you tonight on the live stream. See ya.